Hello everyone. In this session today we're going to be creating a finished good, a FERT material type, where we can basically use for the chemical scenario. It's going to be a fertilizer. Okay, let's jump right in. MMO1. The material will be something like back. Okay, this is the name. It's chemical industry, but this time is not a raw material, but the FERT finished good. I'm going to remove the copy from. Keep in mind that when you are using your SAP, basically sometimes the system remembers the last value you have in certain fields, so they will automatically populate them, assuming that you need them. But in many cases, you don't need them, right? Okay, so let me continue. Let's select similar views that we used to have, and we are going to be using these new views as well, because the finished good are supposed to be sold, right? So we need the sales view to do deliveries and shipments. Okay, so let me select advanced planning as well. We would like to run the advanced planning or configure the advanced planning for this material in particular. Okay, so let me select. The system is populating automatically the typical storage location. This time the storage location will be 3 because we will have finished good in 003. Okay. It should exist. Yes, it exists. The sales organization GL10 and distribution channel 01. Okay, let's start working with this. Base unit measure for this one. Since this is a finished product, we can use pieces as basic unit of measure. Let me check if we have a material group for this. Yes, we do. It's fertilizer. Anyway, keep in mind that this is typically for procurement in general. So when we purchase some fertilizer components of raw materials, we can choose fertilizer, but this is a finished product, okay? So let me just select finished product in this case. Let me put in 11 kg. Description, sorry, yeah, okay. I have the description copy here, yeah. NPK 1515, compound fertilizer. Perfect. Nothing to change here. Classification. Okay, let's select the class we saw the other day. Then we might change it to the one we want. But anyway, let's use it as it is. So this is a new view that we have. Here we typically, this is more from finance, let's say, but in general, we put a 1 here, which means to use full tax, okay? So the sales unit is going to be PC as well. You typically can use, if you use kg here, for example, you might want to use the sales units as pieces, okay? Because the customer would order 3 bags, 5 bags, or whatever, in this case, or it can be drums, pails, whatever. But in this case, it's going to be bags, okay? So, but since we used the base unit of measure as well as pieces, we can keep just as it is without any sales unit here, okay? You can configure, for example, a pallet and say, okay, how many pieces, how many bags? You have 24 bags, for example, and then you create a pallet, okay? And then you put 24 pieces per pallet, okay? We will see that right away. Okay, let me check if this is working. Yeah, you have other options here. Again, we're not going to be, using all the fields because that would be modified for specific scenarios. Okay, let's just create a material in general. Okay, so this is important. The norm would be just from stock. Okay, we're going to be picking up this from stock. And then if we do some changes here, this is more for SD. There are other considerations like we can use here for third party, for example, we can use for returnable containers. So we can use different values here. But for the sake of our scenarios, this will be the standard, which is the norm. Okay. Okay. We can also use this kind of material groups for other purposes as well. We can configure that and start using them. We can use this for labels, for reports, etc. Okay, but we're not going to be touching anything in this case because we're using really, really baseline configuration here, just to make it work. And then we need to start changing things or adding things and for specific scenarios. Okay, so general sales plant. Okay, typically we need this kind of transportation group here as well. Okay, let's assume it's normally pallet. This is not liquid. This is related with SD as well to determine, for example, the shipping point, for example. Okay, you can have shipping points for bulks, which is quite different from the regular from a dock for with pallets, right, and on a truck, etc. So these are used for that. So we're not going to be messing things here. Okay, so what else? Okay, so we cover these new views. Okay, and now I would like to jump into additional data, just to show you two main things we can do here. There are much more, right? But the typical things is a language. We can change the language here. Not change it, but I mean, if the person that it's using this is printing or just using SAP in a different language, we might have a different description, for example. Okay. Sometimes it doesn't. The company does not allow that because typically the names are not translated necessarily, right? But in some cases, you might translate that, okay? But just for the sake of understanding how this works, I will just put this in Spanish, which is my mother tongue. Here we can change the name. Again, normally we do not change the names of the products, okay? Translating them, okay? But let's assume we can just put fertilizante. Okay. Then the second thing we can do is basically this one, which is very important, the unit of measure. Okay. The unit of measure is created automatically when we define the basic unit of measure here. Okay. Basic unit of measure PC. So one entry is created with alternative unit of measure, okay? It's just for the sake of start populating the table. It's one-to-one, the relationship is. You're always going to find that no matter what basic unit of measure you have chosen. But here we can say, for example, that 25 kgs are equal to 1 PC, okay? Let's do the other thing about the pallet. So one pallet, let me just pick up the right one because normally pallets, you can have multiple ones. P, for example, pal, and there is another pal, I think, okay, let's use this one this time. You can configure this as well, okay? It's an MM configuration. You can configure different ones. Sometimes the metric palette is one thing and the other palette for the US isn't because they're not the same in size, let's say. But this time, let's just for the sake of understanding, let's pick up this one, standard. And then let's assume, for example, that we are going to hold, let's say, 24 pieces or 24 bags into one pallet, okay? And that's it. So this way we can, basically we can say in sales, right, we can sell a pallet and the system will know it's 24 pieces. And we will know as well that 25 kgs are contained in one piece of this finished product, okay? So we can go back, okay? And let's continue. Now, let's jump to the next one. The purchasing was selected, even though we can say, okay, no, we're not going to be purchasing this because this is a manufactured product, right? But one thing is important to consider. If you want to start, maybe you want to purchase from an alternative supplier, if your capacity is not enough, right? Maybe you want to purchase the same product from another supplier, or you can be moving this between different locations or plants or warehouses, okay? So it's always advisable to have this view correctly set up anyway. As you can see, it's not a big deal. It's just a simple thing. And let me put finish here. Okay, so let me just set it up just for the sake of having this ready in case we need it, okay? Okay, so MRP1. In MRP1, we can select the typical PD, let's say. We can select as well for different scenarios. Maybe we can use the MPS, okay, where we can put a specific planning time frames here, okay. So we can say, okay, during 1 week, we do not want to the MRP to be proposing anything during that period, for example, that kind of stuff, okay. But those are particular scenarios, okay. Let me just pick up the standard this time. Sorry, it's PD. Where is the PD here? PD, yeah, okay. Okay, and the lot size and procedure, let's assume we produce this weekly. So we want weekly lot size. We're not going to be assigning any MRP area this time, but there will be scenarios where we can assign specific materials for one specific area. Okay, so let's jump into the MRP2, the MRP controller. Yeah, forgot to add it. This time it's finished good, so we're going to use MRP controller 003. Keep in mind, though, those could be real person, okay? So you can put the name on it. So this will be E, okay? It's this in-house production because we're going to be producing this material, okay? So production stores location this time is going to be 3, okay? This is where the material will do the good receipt into, okay? And stores location for external procurement is not needed, right? But let's assume we're going to purchase this sometime. Okay, so let's keep the 3 here as well. There is no special procurement because it's an in-house production this time. And the in-house production time, okay. This is just a generic value, I would say, because this is not necessarily used for scheduling, right? For scheduling, we might use the specific routing or master recipe information, okay? But let's put some generic value here, like in-house production takes, let's assume 2 days, okay? If we're going to purchase this again, we still need this plan delivery time, okay? We can assign a planning calendar as well for scheduling. This is the one I created. Okay, this is the planning calendar. I believe I created only from Monday to Fridays. Okay, this is important because if we assign that, we need to know exactly what planning calendar we're trying to use. Good receipt processing time. Let's assume in one day we can have that. Okay, keep in mind that the good to see processing time is the paperwork you need to do, some processing in the warehouse that you need to do, and also the quality inspection, okay, or some kind of audit for authorization, legal authorization if the material is regulated or that kind of stuff. Okay, let's do the scheduling margin key. Normally we have a couple typically, but we can manage to change this. Okay, let's use the no, okay, let's put the neutral one this time because the other ones will be used for specific scenarios. Okay, so let's just assume that one. Okay, let's put some kind of a safety stock. Keep in mind that we're talking about unit to measure as pieces. Okay, so now it's not kg, so we're talking about 200 pieces. Probably that's quite a lot. Okay, so let me put just a lower value here, 50 pieces. This is for other scenarios as well. Okay, we can do some kind of a dynamic safety stock and that kind of stuff. But let's finish this in a standard way. The only thing we're going to be doing is extra thing is going to be the advanced planning this time. Okay, the availability check. Then I think strategy. Yes. Okay. This time we need to put some strategy group here. There is another way of we can do this, okay? But this time it's just from the material master perspective. Let's put it in the material master. We can use the typical one, which is 40. Basically, it's planning with final assembly. This is a kind of a make to stock. It is a make to stock, but it will consider the sales orders that are coming in. Okay, so it's kind of a hybrid. Okay, you're not doing necessarily make to order, but make to stock, but you also consider all the sales orders that are coming in. Okay, so let me just put the 40 this time. We need to define here the consumption mode as well. The typical one is backward forward consumption. This is related to the peers or planning dependent requirements that we can use for kind of a putting a forecasted quantity, right, that we will need of this product for the future. So putting that, those peers are consumed, okay? There will be a specific video for that. If they're not already released, you will need to wait, but probably they are already released, so maybe you can take a look at that, okay? This is basically how the MD61 transaction works, which is basically for these peers, okay? You're kind of putting a kind of a forecast of what you're going to sell by week or by month, okay? And then the system will pick up that and will run the MRP according to that. But in this case, we're going to be using advanced planning, which is a different approach of that, okay? But anyway, let's put this because it's not excluded. We can use advanced planning plus the forecasting, okay? Because the forecasting will help to adjust some buffers that in the advanced planning the system is proposing, okay? So the backward consumption, let me do it for just 30 days, for example. And forward, let's just do 15 days, for example. Okay, let me continue. We're going to be seeing this in scenarios, okay? But let's continue. MRP4, yeah. Let me probably choose individual or collective. Yeah, depending on the scenario, we might need to change that, but so far, no need to change it. Okay, let's jump into the advanced planning. First of all, we need to activate here. We can activate it here, okay? Then we can start adding a few things. We don't need to modify everything, okay? It will depend on the scenarios we want to be using for, okay? So again, this is the 40 is a typical thing, okay? Let me just put the 40 here. What else we can add right now? The shell life. It's already in the other one, so probably we're not gonna add anything else. Let's keep it simple this time. Okay, yeah, perfect. Okay, yes, there is a kind of a missing thing here. Configuration, it needs to be done. Okay, supply chain management. Just for the sake of understanding, the way of this is basically PPDS. Okay, so for PPDS, production planning, detail scheduling, we need to use a system that used to be APO as an external system and now is embedded into S/4HANA. Okay, so we need to define that as a location as well. The plans are as a location, okay, and the material will be created as a product for that, okay, because in the past when APO was running, that system contains a copy of the material master, but as a product master. Okay, so there are certain things that has to be transferred. In this case, in S/4HANA, since this is embedded, there are a lot of data transfer. It's an internal interface that will be moving data to keep it consistent and in only, let's say, with unique values, right? To avoid duplicating masters and having different values on that, right? So let me try if I can continue without doing that. If not, I will need to stop and do this first, okay? Okay, let me jump into the next one. So the location was created already, so we shouldn't have any defaulted. Perfect. It's doing a lot of assumptions. And now we can go to the second. Plan one. Okay, let me define a shell life. Let's assume the shell life for this material is going to be just 3 months. Okay, maybe it's not true, but it's just for the sake of other scenarios I will need to test. Okay, so let me just put 30 here, which is the minimum shell life still remaining before we can send it to another warehouse or plant. Okay, so let me choose the batch management because we want to control this. Okay, the shell life, I mean. The visual, no need to change because it's pieces as well. In this case, nothing else will be used here. Okay, plant data 2, nothing. Now let's jump into quality management. Quality management, let's assume we're going to be doing every 90 days inspection interval. Okay, again, we're not changing anything here. We will do this proper setup directly for the scenarios. Okay, so accounting 1. What's the typical thing is to run a costing run, let's say, to get the typical standard price or standard cost. Keep in mind that when SAP says price, it means cost, okay? It's not the price that you're going to be selling this product. It's just the cost of this product, okay? Plus profit, you have a final price, okay? But anyway, it's a typical thing that it's already known in SAP, I mean. The standard price for this material, let's just for the sake of this creation of this material, let's just for the sake of that, let me just put the value, okay? It's not necessarily going to be the same. When we do some kind of a product costing videos, we will see that in detail, okay? But this time, let me just add a value here. Let's assume it's 2.1 US dollar per kilo, or we can say sorry, 2100 per 100. Okay, so if you divide this, it's sorry, no, if you divide this, it's 24. It's going to be, yeah, that one. Yeah, if you divide this by 100, it's going to be 2 decimal points to the left. It's going to be 2.1. Okay, perfect. When we press enter, oh, okay, there's something else missing before I press enter. The evaluation class. Let me check. Yeah, this is a finished good. So we need to use this one, okay? We can use others for other purposes, okay? But the typical thing is the 2920, okay? In this case, remember that the main purpose of this is finance, okay? But that's another module we're not going to be dealing with. But basically, for you to have in mind, since MM is also, part of this, I would say, basically we can assign a evaluation class and the system will determine the right, for example, the right accounts for different business processes, okay? For example, inventory, okay? So the system will know which account should be credited, okay, or debited depending on the business scenario. Okay. The important thing is this is mandatory, okay? This is needed. Okay. The system is converting now to US dollars, okay? Keep in mind that once we save this, we cannot modify it anymore, okay? We can go back until we do not, as long as we haven't saved this, we still can change it, okay? But not after that. I will show you right after we finish the product. Okay, keep in mind the material region, okay? This is important. And nothing else here so far for this baseline scenario. Okay, so let me save it. Okay, it's created. Let me go to display. Actually, let me go to change because I want to show you something. Okay, it's not in 001. Keep in mind that we define in production, right? 003. Now, I would like to show you the accounting one. See? This is gray out, means we cannot change it from here anymore, okay? If we need to change this, it's going to be a separate transaction, and if the difference will go to a variance account, okay? So we need to be very careful when we set up the price, the cost in this case, right? They call it price, but it's the cost, right? So when we define this, that's what I was saying, the typical procedure sometimes is just leave this blank, 0, right? And then is controlling or finance, who's going to be, actually for SAP is controlling, okay? But depending on the company, could be finance team that's taking care of that, or sometimes bigger company can have specific controller, let's say, or product costing, accountants or people, right? And they will take care of the product costing final value. So they will put it in the other transaction, or these views can be left uncreated, right? So you do not create these views and they will enter and create this view directly, okay? So that reminds me that I will show you in another video how to create some views that are not created necessarily. I believe I already shown you how to create a QM view, okay? Because depending on the process, sometimes those views are not created at all by the first person, right? And then the specific person in the QM team, or in this case, controlling team, can access and create only the accounting views and costing views, for example, okay? Perfect. So I'm going to save it because actually there was no change, as you can see here. I haven't changed anything, okay? Okay, thank you. I hope you enjoyed this this video, and please do not forget to like and subscribe if you find any value on this kind of video series, and I'm prepared for you. Okay, thank you.